So welcome to the show. We're here at the show. I mean, I made it. I finally made it to the show. People are like, one day, Chris, you're gonna get big enough to be in the show, and I'm here. I'm at the show. I got here. And here, if you're wondering, is San Diego.
Yeah.
Right? Because the WordCamp San Diego, and I'm one of the organizers, not one of the major organizers, because there are people in there doing way more work than I am, but still one of the organizers, and I got to work with all the vendors and sponsors, which is like GoDaddy, which is awesome, because that's where you're at. And so me and Mendel are here at the show. Welcome to the show.
That was good. That was probably the best show intro that I've had yet. Sorry to all the previous guests on the show, right? Oh, now they're gonna be upset. What got you intensely excited about web technology? And obviously there are many steps between where you started and where you ended up, right? But
there's a lot of steps. There's a ridiculous amount of steps, because I got involved in the web in 1994 and it's 2016.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of steps. In 94, Mosaic was the first browser that came out. I was a college student at UC Berkeley. We'd been building a massive off-campus network where people could play games like Duke Nukem, and it was running
Great game, by the way.
Running on Windows 3.1.1. We were connecting to the campus network, which I don't think you were supposed to, but we're playing those games with Trumpet WinSock and making those connections and loading up a whole bunch of players on Windows 3.1.1, which was kind of for networking, but it was kind of broken, and we were just doing as much as we could to get like 20 people in an apartment playing the same video game at the same time, and then all of a sudden one day I came back from the campus, and my buddy has Mosaic, and he's like, look, you can see the stuff from a museum. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about, right? And so we were looking at documents and photos and text, and you're reading and going, this is crazy. And then it turned out you can make your own site. And so we used to go every day to Jerry's Links, which became Yahoo.
Yeah.
And we'd look at the links and we'd add links. It was a kind of a human managed directory rather than the stuff that we saw later from Excite and Alta Vista. And so I was just excited to be part of it. And so we started, and I got this job at Berkeley Lab, which is a government research lab, which turns out had the third fixed subnet of the whole internet right there.
Wow.
And they were working out of grants from ARPANET on the internet. And my first project was to multicast enable routers so that video could move over this internet thing. Huh. And I'm like, this is awesome. And we all do something as a kid where you think this is going to be amazing, but then it almost never lasts as long as your life. Like it just peters out. You're like, oh, I'm going to collect baseball cards, and then it falls over. Or
right.
I'm going to be an umpire for a softball league or baseball league, and then it falls off. And part of it is because those things just end, but the web has never ended. So I just keep having a job, and things keep changing and moving, and I keep taking steps.
And you keep doing stuff that you love.
Yeah, so it's been a blast.
When you got that spark in your eye, when you saw the internet, and you were like, man, this is amazing. I want to be a part of this. What was the thing that was exciting you about it? When you think about that one thing, you're like, man, that's just, it's gold, it's beautiful, it's awesome. So the model of computing before I got involved with the web, pre-web, it was all client server, and so you had a database and you had software clients on someone's desktop, and it was a pain to manage, it was a pain to support, but it was totally connected. And then we went to the web and nothing was connected. We were running stateless, and no one thought you could build an application on the web. And so I built within the first. From 95 to 2000, I think I built 100 different web applications. Applications that were in the browser, but were connecting to databases that understood something of state. We were passing query strings on the URL and doing crazy things. But what I realized was I could solve real business problems, like business problems that had budget assigned to it in big corporations that they had spent money, right? And they had allocated budget to solve big problems, and I could do it on the web. And I'm like, this is great, because my hobbies and my job are now the same, right? And that was incredible. And I think there's that angle of doing something that people said couldn't be done, plus doing it in something that you really enjoy, plus solving a business problem that has money attached to it, all together made me excited to just stay in that game. What was your first setup like? Hardware. I'm saying just, specifically, do you remember anything about that first setup? Yeah.
My first computer was an AT clone that had a 20 megabyte hard drive over two different drives. There was a C drive and a D drive. They couldn't put them on one.
Yeah.
10 meg each with 256K RAM, K, not meg, not gig,
Yeah.
right? RAM, and it didn't have enough to power the UI and a mouse at the same time. So we had to go to the store to buy RAM, and me and my brother went to the store, and they were like, you don't understand what you're asking, because we're like, we need a meg or 2 megs of RAM, and he's like, that's like $1,000, you kids, you can't, like, you go get your dad, you know?
Yeah,
and
right.
I'm like, but I need it. I need it, because we were copying code from these magazines. You'd buy a magazine, and the inside 10 pages were code,
right.
and you just copy the code, and then you had your own game. But you could also change the lines in the game and everything.
Yep.
And this was awesome. That was my first rig, and I took that rig all the way to college, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
And then I got a laptop, a little Toshiba. The screen was like 7 inches. You're like, this is the best laptop ever, right? With a roller ball.
And it weighed like
7, 8
pounds,
pounds, 10 pounds. You're like, oh my god. But I started when the computers were heavy and they were slow. And the beautiful thing about the web was the web didn't need more than that.
Yeah.
Right? You were working locally.
Right.
And you're writing HTML file. And you're like, I don't need 10 gigs of RAM. I don't need 12 gigs of RAM. I can do it on half a gig of RAM. As long as the operating system is running, and I can get we used to use these little pieces of software that were web editors, right?
Yep.
And you're like, no, don't give me the WYSIWYG, just give me I just wanted a text, right? So I could type HTML like mad, right? This is the pre-CSS days.
Right.
And you're just like running through
tons of tables and
tables and everything, right? And frames. I mean, we were there when
frames,
there when frames were started. You're like, I don't know what a frame is. And so I could do that on a lightweight computer, right? And then I got to buy my first server, right?
That was awesome,
at Berkeley
huh?
Lab. I got to buy a server, and I called Dell up, and I'm like, Dell, what's the difference between this, PowerEdge server and my, whatever it was, regular desktop computer? And he's like, well, it's a server. I'm like, but what does that mean, right? And he's like, well, you can expand it. And I'm like, expanded how? And so we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And this is in the day when, if you're young, right? If you're 24, and this is an older 24 than today's 20. Today, 24-year-olds, like, they know amazing amounts. But in those days, you call someone and you're like, hey, how much is that going to cost? And he's like, $120. And you're like, is he saying $120? Is he saying $120? Is he saying 1,200? Like, what does 120 mean, right? Because you don't have any context, right? You're a young kid. You're in big business. I was working at a government research lab.
Right.
I'm calling a vendor. I'm calling, Dell, and I don't know how to contextualize. So one time I was like, I can't believe I'm in business. I was like, $1.20? And the guy laughed at me like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, I am. I don't know. Like, you have to. One of the things you have to just embrace in this space, and I've been embracing it for now, 21 years, is you have to be very comfortable just being an idiot.
Yeah.
Just asking a question you don't understand and just saying, yeah, I don't understand it. Tomorrow, when I get this answer, tomorrow I will understand it. But today I don't, and that's just okay. I don't need to hold any airs about me knowing everything. I don't know it. Tell me what I don't understand, and just collect information.
Yeah. So now it's a totally different world.
It is.
But at the same time, it's
Nothing's
not a
changed.
totally different world.
That's right.
So what has changed since that time that you were negotiating for that first server, and you had, remember, 20 megabytes on your hard drive, not 20 gigabytes or 20 terabytes. And you were just getting started, and you were using text editors to build websites and interesting things on the web. What's changed between there and where we're at now?
So a couple things have changed. One thing that's changed for the better is I can now do everything that I used to have to talk to people. I can now do it all alone, right? So I can buy a computer, I can buy a server somewhere in the cloud, I can spin up an account, I can take my files and upload them, I can spin it up, I can buy an SSL cert, I can install it, I can get everything prepped, I can buy domains, I can point it to those servers, I can launch a campaign, I can go spin up marketing software and automated marketing, and I can go create links, lists of campaigns. I can take those links and put it into my site to collect names. I can connect that to a mail server, and I can do all of that at 2 in the morning and talk to not a single person. I can probably get all that done in about 2 hours. And it used to be that every one of those things, you had to talk to someone, and each of those conversations was half an hour. And so you could spend days doing that work. You can do a lot more with a lot less money than before, right? Which means everybody can get started. Everybody can run a store.
Lower barrier to entry.
Lower barrier to entry. Everybody can try anything and see if it works. because it's not expensive and you don't need to be an expert to do it.
Right.
So that's maybe one big change. I think a second dynamic to this is the pace at which new technology is coming in, and the pace at which you have to keep learning has grown dramatically. Like, it used to be that if you were a back-end developer and you were a front-end developer, the back-end developer had it harder. The database hasn't changed that much. The object relational mapping hasn't changed that much. Like, these things haven't adjusted. But the front-end guys, dang, right? Every 6 weeks there's a new framework.
Yeah.
Every 6 weeks, and not just like, you need to learn JavaScript, but it's what kind of JavaScript, and JavaScript for what? This just worries about your controls. This just worries about your credit card validation in your controls. This just worries about the layout of the forms that hold your controls, that holds the validation logic. This just holds the layouts of the sections that hold the forms, that hold the controls, that holds the validation of the credit card in your controls. And you're like, what? Like, so front-end guys are just like, oh my God. And then you're like, and don't write the CSS, because now you want to pre-compile it using a pre-compiler. And then you're like, but you can put logic in your pre-compiler.
So meanwhile, they're doing more, using more back-end principles.
Yeah, but they're doing it all on the front end. And the front end is like now you have to be an expert on, 18 technologies, which means the poor front-end guy is like, wait, I'm getting hosed here. Like, how come those guys aren't doing more, right? And those guys in the back are like, what? I'm good. Just leave me back here, right? So the amount of technology you have to learn, right? There was a point in time where I knew everything I need to know for the web.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, I know SQL. I know how to write the code that gets data out of the database. And I know how to write, whether it was in Perl or it was in Cold Fusion at one point, whether it was ASP, whether it was Java. I can write the code that connects to the database, opens up the connection, and makes that request through SQL and pulls it out. And then I know how to write the HTML that presents it, and even how to write a little bit of CSS to make it look prettier. And that was it. That's what you needed to know to build that was a full stack developer. Today, a full stack developer, forget. I mean, like, there are them.
Exist, right?
They are them. They're full stack developers, but they're flavors of full stack, because trying to say I know everything from the beginning to the end and everything in between. And by the way, you got to spin up varnish, and you got to think about cache and object cache and fragment cache, and you're just like, oh my God. So that's been a massive change. Is that the breadth of technology that we're now consuming and using, and the amount of stuff that we are constantly being open to learn, but also in some cases demanded to learn, has made it really, really a lot of work for developers.
Okay, so you talk a lot about change. Talk a lot about how things used to be, how they are now.
Yep.
And you yourself have gone through a professional change in the past few weeks.
Well, you're talking about change and change in my life and things you've noticed and things that have recently changed. I stopped wearing ball caps. I started wearing real hats, because I'm a real man now.
Yeah.
I went into a hat store and I said, I wear these caps. And she's like, yeah, I was a kid too. I was like, dang, lady, why you gotta be so mean? She's like, it's time to wear an adult hat. I'm like, okay. Is that the change you're talking about?
Well, so that's actually, it's one of my more favorite stories of you, mainly because I wear ball caps still.
Yeah, exactly.
Feel a little awkward about it. But no, actually what I was referring to is the change. You don't work at Crowd Favorite anymore.
Yep.
So what are you doing? And
right now, I'm just looking for people to interview me, and then I'm hoping at the end of this I get some cash. I don't know. So my friend Kareem runs Crowd Favorite. We've been friends for many years, and at a point in time, 18, 19 months ago, actually for about 2 years, he was like, come join me over here, come join me over here. And I was like, you just don't have any problems that are like problems that I normally solve. And so he decided to go buy a couple companies all really quickly and be like, okay, I have problems. And I was like, you're right, I do solve those problems. So I spent the last 19 months trying to work through team structure, leadership structures, process, and got a lot of that working so it was really tight and functioning well. And when that was done, I just said, hey, as it was getting close to being done, right? We started talking in December and then again in January, February, like, hey, when we wrap this up and it's tight, I would hope we can kind of close this chapter for the business, and then I can go back to doing product stuff, because I'm not just, my inclination is not towards services like Kareem is, and Kareem's inclination is services all day long, and he's good at it and it's great, but that's not my that's not my thing, right? I'm a product guy, and so and a leadership guy, and the leadership stuff and the management stuff was kind of done, but the product stuff, I'm like, let me go find a place to go do that. So we found a good spot. We wrapped up that chapter, closed it off, and they're doing very well. And I'm a week into like figuring out, okay, so kind of what's next? I'll, write more and talk more and coach more, and then figure out the next steps.
Listen, I get that you're trying to figure out exactly what it is that you're going to do next. But right now, in the next 2-3 weeks, maybe 2-3 months, where's your head at?
So I'm writing, I'm coaching, I'm advising, I'm working on a little plug-in here and there for 2 little problems that I want to fix on my site, or I want to fix on another site I'm getting ready to launch. So I'm working on a couple of those things. And then I'm looking at the hard problems we haven't solved yet, right? I'm looking at the hard problems that I go, we're not doing behavioral analytics as well. We're not doing dynamic content so well. Like, you can't create a bit of content and then say, this content is free of my site, but can go anywhere on my site. And then I want contextual dynamics and behavioral dynamics to put it somewhere, the right place for the right person at the right time. We don't do that. Like, we're like, no, I put it on the page, or I made a custom post type, and so there's problems that you go, these are tough problems. I'd like to explore them and see if any of them are exciting enough and challenging enough and interesting enough to enough people that it may be worth digging into deeper there. So we'll kind of see how it goes.
Cool. What is one piece of advice that is, a sentence, 2 sentences, something very concise that you can offer to people in the community, people that are trying to start a business, just people in life? What is that one piece of advice?
So before you go to bed, ask yourself 2 questions. These are the 2 questions I ask myself before I go to bed every night. Number 1, did I help someone? And number 2, would my wife marry me again?
And that's the advice.
That's my advice.
All right, simple enough. Well, thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching another ridiculous episode. Wait, what was the name of the show again?
The show.
Oh, okay. Thanks for watching another episode of the show.